Welcome to the Squared Circle Pit with your host, Rob Pasbani.
Now entering the Squared Circle Pit, we're bi-coastal today. I'm here in New York. He's in LA. I have Eddy Torres from the Comedy Store Wrestling Podcast. Eddy, thanks for making the time wearing a beautiful New Japan G1 Climax 32 jersey.
Yes, sir.
Dressing up in style.
It was a gift from the awesome Jeff Cobb of the United Empire.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's Forbidden Door week. It is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting weeks of the year. This show, while not necessarily promoted as AEW's or New Japan's WrestleMania, kind of has that same kind of vibe for me. I went to the first Forbidden Door in Chicago last year at the United Center, coincidentally, and it was my favorite show that year that I attended, and one of my all-time favorite shows. Just every match was phenomenal. It was just like a celebration of being a wrestling fan. And this year, while it's Wednesday today, we still don't have the full card. Even though we only have like 5 matches, it's shaving up to be maybe the best event of the year. What do you think so far?
I think this is the Forbidden Door that we were all expecting the first time around. Because, I mean, even though Forbidden Door 1 was awesome, it felt like there were some dream matches that weren't happening due to like injury or someone not being available. You know, there was a lot of issues for some of these dream matches that people wanted. But I feel like we're getting them this second round. And I'm very excited for some of these matches for sure.
Agreed. Last year, the match I was most looking forward to that didn't happen was Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. And I just assumed, hey, both guys are healthy. Both guys can travel. I assumed that's what we were getting this year. But in fact, no, we got an even sicker dream match, which is Bryan Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada. I'm really excited for this match. Is going to blow us away. I don't think we're ready for how insanely good this match is going to be.
Yeah, I'm excited for the American fans to get a good look at Okada because, I mean, he's appeared on AEW TV a couple times, but I don't think they really know what's up. Like, even, for example, my co-host of Comedy Store Wrestling, Earl, I had to get him into New Japan. You know, I took him to a show at the Vermont and started getting him slowly into New Japan. And then even then, after he got into it and started following like Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, he had only heard of Okada. He hadn't even seen the Kenny Okada like classics from years ago, the 60-minute classics. So I'm excited for American fans that know who New Japan is or what New Japan is, but haven't really gotten a chance to see Okada like give a clinic, as they say.
That's a great point. That's something that I sometimes forget about myself because I'm so in the trenches of my wrestling fandom, is that New Japan is actually, there's quite a learning curve. It's really hard to get into. You really have to want to like it, to like go through the UI of their streaming service because it's in Japanese. You got to figure out how to get the translations going. And also they don't have the same type of schedule that an American show has. I think I actually talked about this with Rocky Romero on here a few weeks ago, which, by the way, thank you for introducing us. Where it's like, you know, you have these house shows that are kind of like the Raws or the Dynamites, and the trios matches, I mean the 6-man matches are kind of what set up the angles. So it's a different way of consuming wrestling as well. But when you get to those singles matches, it's better than anything. Like Okada is maybe the best wrestler in the world, or maybe it's Danielson. I guess we're going to find out this weekend.
Makes that match exciting for sure. The fact that we don't really know, it's one of those two for sure.
And either guy can win. I feel with Forbidden Door, you can typically assume who's getting the win because it's a very political show. There has to be just as many wins for New Japan as AEW. AEW, I feel, does have the upper hand because they are the bigger promotion. I'm sure their title match is going to go on last. But I feel in general, you know, you want to treat both companies with respect. But this is a match where I feel like both guys would be willing to lose to the other, you know, in service of the story of the match. So it's very hard to assume who's going to win.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I like that there's no belts associated with it because typically when there is a belt associated with it, you kind of, you know, there is that surprise factor, but you can kind of assume that the belt's not going to go to New Japan. Like the AEW World Championship is not going to go to New Japan. You know?
Right. Yeah, like last year, the main event was, to your point, John Moxley versus Tanahashi. You knew that John Moxley's winning this match.
Right.
But here you don't know. I feel like maybe Okada's going to win this one. I feel like Danielson doesn't need a win at all. Like, he could eat a loss easily. And Okada's still their guy. So I think they're going to give this one to Okada, and the reason I think this is because the other match of the double main event, which is Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, I assume Kenny Omega is going to win again. It's going to be for the IWGP United States title. Already, these two for 2023 have arguably the match of the year for this year already, with their first encounter on January 4th at Wrestle Kingdom. This is the rematch. There's no way it's not going to be sick. What are your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I'm very excited. This is if anybody is watching this that watches Comedy Store Wrestling knows, like, we are huge Kenny Omega Ospreay fans. That whole feud has been bubbling for a while, and their chemistry is ridiculous, not just in the ring but on the mic. So very excited to see this. I think Ospreay wins, and this way we get a rubber match at All In at Wembley Stadium with a local champion walking into the match instead of
I agree that I think they're setting up for a third match at All In, and that makes sense. Ospreay's huge in the UK, and Omega needs a big match. But to me, I think it would mean more if Ospreay won the title in the UK than if he came in defending it. But I get your point. Like how do they get to this third match with Ospreay losing? I don't know. Like, what if Omega beats him twice already? How would he win? Plus, Omega's basically going into this match as the face and Ospreay as the heel. There's this potential alignment with Don Callis. So I do see how Ospreay could get the win. And much like with the previous match, he can go either way, except the difference is neither of these guys could take a loss right now because they're both super duper protected. So it's going to be very interesting how this happens.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, or I envision it, like I said, was Ospreay winning, taking the championship into London, but then also at London, he walks in as champion, but instead of having him lose in front of his hometown crowd, this is where we bring in an Ibushi situation where maybe, or some kind of betrayal for Omega. He finds himself in a situation where maybe the Bucks betray him and he's on his own, and here comes the saving grace, the Golden Lover, Ibushi, to save him and maybe interfere in the match. I don't know, some kind of shenanigans so that everybody comes out looking kind of strong at the end of the London show. Because, yeah, you can't have either of those guys lose in London either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. These are the two top matches. And honestly, once these matches got announced a few weeks ago, I was sold on the show. Like, these two matches are easily going to carry the show. But we have some more matches that have already been announced. The AEW title match is going to be MJF versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. Tanahashi, second year in a row, getting a AEW world title shot at Forbidden Door. I think this very much telegraphs who's going to win, which is obviously MJF.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Tanahashi, the ace, go ace all the way, but he's getting a little old. You can tell in the ring. I'm not just saying that to be mean. It's like you could see it. He's a little stiffer. He's a little slower. Also, I saw a match with him here in LA where he lost his front teeth. He has no front teeth, by the way. He's wearing.
I think they're back again. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like they're they come in and out. They're like Legos. They pop in. But like, yeah, I was so distracted because they fell out and he was like celebrating and you just had the two fangs and I was like, what's happening over there? But anyway, he's starting to get a little, like, I feel perhaps it would have been a better choice to put Tanahashi up against Jungle Boy. Have the legend, give the younger talent a rub. MJF should have, they should have gotten the world champion versus the world champion. That's what I think it should have happened. We should have MJF, Sonata. They're both at their peak right now. They're both on fire. Would have been a way more exciting match. And then just have Tanahashi give a little shine to the new guy and have Jungle Boy look strong against a legend, Yeah,
I assume they would go that route as well. I didn't think they would do MJF versus MJF versus Sonata, because like we mentioned before, who would take the pinfall there? Neither company would want their world champion to lose. I assumed it might have been like a trios match or something, but then it was like, well, MJF isn't affiliated with anybody, you know? So I ran into, so I think this is the best solution they could have had, where they each offer up a mid-big guy, like a mid-tier main eventer, let's say, a mid-upper carder, with Tanahashi. I agree with you. Tanahashi now is very much in the legend role that Yuji Nagata was in, where, you know, everybody agrees he is one of the all-time greats. He's past his prime. He doesn't deliver the moves quite like he used to. But when need be, I feel like Tanahashi really, really turns it up. Sometimes too much so. Like, sometimes I'm like, bro, this is a fucking, you know, no big deal house show. Why are you doing a high fly flow to the floor with your shot knees? Like, conserve your knees, you know? So I think he's going to, and I heard actually a pretty interesting theory. We didn't discuss that CM Punk came back yet. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But
I have words.
as part of CM Punk's return, we'll definitely talk about it. He intimated that he still has his version of the AEW world title, which he was never pinned for, and that he would be like Max could come get it when he wants. So I heard an interesting theory on Twitter. I saw somebody post that Max, teasing that he's going to no-show the pay-per-view, actually doesn't end up coming to the pay-per-view. And they're scrambling to get an opponent for Tanahashi, and CM Punk would be the opponent because that was the match that they teased last year. And CM Punk has the claim to still being the world champion, and maybe this is how they set up a MJF versus CM Punk all-in match in London. Which I wouldn't be opposed to any of this. This is a very interesting theory. It's a little overbooked, but that's how AEW likes to do it nowadays. So I could see it happening.
That's interesting, dude. I would love if MJF no-shows. If he does what he said he did, like during that post interview where he's just like, nope, not doing it. And that's such great character work that I would love it. Yeah, I mean, sure. I guess CM Punk versus Tanahashi would be cool.
That seems like the more exciting match for me.
Yeah, to set it up. I don't want to see MJF and Tanahashi, honestly. I'll watch it, but I just don't really think it's going to be... It'll be a good standard wrestling match. I'm sure all the moves will be great, but there's no excitement in it for me. It's just another match.
I'm not looking forward to it. I agree with you. And I feel the same way with Jungle Boy and Sonata.
Yeah.
When I heard Jungle Boy accept the challenge...
They could have picked so many other people.
I was just like, yeah, you could have given me 100 picks. I wouldn't have said Jungle Boy was going to take the challenge. I assumed it was going to be Jon Moxley. But then, like we were saying, you know, Jon Moxley is somebody that they very much protect. They don't want him taking pinfalls. And there's no way Sonata is losing this match. So it couldn't be Jon Moxley. They have to feed somebody big enough to where it's not insulting. And, you know, you could argue Jungle Boy was just in the main event. He didn't quite win, but he is... pushed as a upper mid-card main eventer guy. It's kind of wild to think that he's pushed at the same level as the legend Hiroshi Tanahashi, but you could make that argument. And they are telling this story with Jungle Boy where he's desperate to win a singles title, and he's starting to get a little envious of his partner Hook. And I think by losing to Sonata, it would play into his desperation storyline even further. So I understand why they're doing it. I'm not super excited for it.
No. And also, can we stop it with the Jungle Hook? What a misuse of Hook. Since he started teaming up with people. The Danhausen Hook thing, or what did they call it? Hookhausen. No. Hook has potential. Hasn't been used as well as he should be. But I would have maybe even Hook or Darby. If you want to pick a pillar, give him Darby. You know,
I agree. That would have been a much more exciting match. Well, I feel like Darby's probably doing something with Sting that we don't know about. Like, I think, you know, they're obviously going to announce like 5 more matches on Dynamite this week. I am not a fan of them waiting until the absolute last minute to announce matches. Not just because I have a podcast that does a preview episode of, but it feels very rushed. I guess like once you get to the pay-per-view, it doesn't matter. You know, the matches happen how they happen. But I like to have like a few weeks of anticipation for these things.
For sure. It's exciting to see it coming, and maybe even, I don't know, introduce story elements to these matches.
Yeah. Well, I guess the challenge with the story elements is they only really have 1 week with the Japanese talent because everything is so tight with Dominion and you know, having those shows, so they can only bring them in for a certain amount of time. Because I think even now New Japan had shows this weekend. Because I saw Tanahashi cut a promo, so they're busy. They can't. It's a very tight promotional window that they have. Like Sonata hasn't even really been on AEW TV other than that one segment.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was fantasy booking, just trying to figure out, because you know the whole AEW versus WWE dynamic. Everybody's like, who's better? What, you know, AEW's ratings are going down. Blah blah blah. I think a good move for AEW would be to increase the relationship with New Japan, make it an even more symbiotic, not merger, like a full-on merger, but, you know, even like just combining, I know this is crazy, but combining the AEW championship with the IWGP championship, kind of like Roman Reigns-ish, where you got the two belts, and having your champ, you know, like the whole champ versus champ idea. You could send an MJF to Japan for a match or two, or just have, you know, Sonata take the AEW championship over there, defend it a little bit in America a couple times, and then he goes back to Japan. I don't know. Just further increasing that relationship with New Japan, I think, would give them an edge that, you know, WWE doesn't have at this moment.
I think that is quite a hot take.
Yeah, very hot take. I know. It's fantasy booking.
But I just logistically, I can't. It just seems like a nightmare because it'd be like the old NWA where you'd have to really plan out the world champion schedule. And then there's some weekends when both companies have big shows and it's like, who would get the chance? It would have to be a very short-term thing that they have to kind of plan out meticulously. Like if they were to do it, it could have happened here and then at All In, you know, break the unification somehow. And then it would be like that. But I just can't see it do it. And also, I just don't think at this point, as much of a fan of New Japan as I am, and I say this with no ill will to New Japan. I love New Japan. So I will defend them to the death. But I just don't think that they're as big of a brand at the moment as AEW. Like you said, Earl, your co-host, he doesn't know New Japan. He doesn't follow it, and I mean, he hosts a wrestling podcast, you know. So it just shows that I feel like with New Japan, they have a lot further to go, especially in the States, and I think this is where AEW is of huge service to them. But when New Japan is not involved with AEW, it's not as big of a deal. Like their New Japan Strong shows, they will typically have an Okada or someone of that level come in, but that's just the main event. I feel like the undercard is really filled out with American talents. Not saying it's bad, but it's just its own kind of indie thing as opposed to the true Japanese New Japan experience, where I feel like this particular show, you do have that, but it's a unique thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I prefaced it with fantasy booking because I'm a big fan of the old territories idea, having that world champion travel around, and that to me is really cool. But yeah, I don't think logistically. I mean, we're like you said, we haven't even gotten the full card, and we're not getting an AEW pay-per-view with just 5 matches. There's got to be at least 17 matches on there. So
well, I think that I imagine the rest are kind of like tag matches, and like which I'm okay with. Give me 8-man tags. Give me 10. I want as many crossover things on the show. Like one of the most fun moments from last year that sticks into my head was Sting, Darby, and Shingo against I forget who they even wrestled. I think they wrestled a bunch of Japanese guys, but it was just Sting and Shingo, doing their stuff, and then Shibata came out, and it was so great. It was such a wonderful celebration.
AEW should do something like Survivor Series for this Forbidden Door. Don't call it Survivor Series, but just have teams like that. I
would be for that. I think they could they have the roster to do. I think with AEW, they need to do more gimmick events, like a Survivor Series, not necessarily a Royal Rumble, but something like that, where it's like a special one night only event. They have so much talent to pull from. They could do it. It could also be like a lethal lottery, like the old WCW Battle Bowl. It would be really fun to do. So the only other match that seems official is Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. And this is going to be another phenomenal match because people constantly underrate Orange Cassidy. They don't realize just because he is so good at portraying this lethargic character that he's in fact a very talented pro wrestler and can hold his own easily against Zack Sabre Jr., who's to me one of the most unique wrestlers because his match is unlike any other match on the show. It's equivalent to like the one hardcore match, except totally in the other direction, where instead of just hardcore wrestling, it's actually hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
It's catch as catch can. It's all this stuff. And it's so fun and believable. And I'm looking forward to see how the two of them work together.
Absolutely. I mean, Zach is a friend. He's very, I'm biased because he's a friend, but also Cassidy's, has been to the Comedy Store and hung out. So I'm also on his side for this one. But Zack Sabre Jr. has a way of making the boring wrestling, and I use air quotes, boring wrestling, make it interesting. Because mat wrestling, typically people even complain about it in UFC. Like when people are on the ground, trying to maneuver, everybody goes, it's boring. But he makes it interesting because he's always coming up with something new, some kind of weird twist. He'll put, your leg around in one way that you've never seen before. He's doing octopus grabs and finger twists and all kinds of things. So I'm excited to see what he does versus Orange Cassidy. And like you said, Orange Cassidy, in the beginning, I wasn't a big fan. I was the guy. I was the one yelling at him in the indies, like, get your hands out of your pockets. What are you doing? But then, through time, I saw him do a couple of shows here in LA where he actually worked hard, like lucha style. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. So I'm a big fan, and I'm hoping that this match delivers, which I think it will. They're both great. And this whole buildup over the last few weeks of Orange Cassidy opening up every Dynamite, defending his title, I think was meant to showcase, like, hey, look, he can work. He's been great. Yeah.
Who are some other guys you want to see on the show? Like who are some musts for you?
Well, to cycle back to old Chicken McNugget Punk, I would like to see him and Tenta. It would be cool that if he were to finally do this match, that he's like, oh, I'm not too interested in it. Like, why? Why aren't you interested in it? Because you stole his move? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think they would gel well. They would have a fun one.
I think it'd be a great match to determine who gets to keep the finisher forever. Just make that the stipulation. Who gets to keep the go to sleep? I would love to see Suzuki, but that's just me personally. I would love to see Suzuki.
Oh, I'm certain we're going to see him. He's on Dynamite, so he has to be. He's in the country. He's going to be on the show for sure.
Is there somebody on the AEW roster that has a reputation for chops? Because you got the Gunther, Walter. I refuse to call him Gunther. Walter.
Joe had some chops this week.
Yeah, but did we get Joe and Suzuki already? I feel like we did. What match was it that Joe had where his chest was about to explode from all the chops? I think it was Suzuki. Either Suzuki or Ishii. One of those.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you're right. We did get it. I totally forgot that we got that. Oh.
It was pretty brutal. I remember there was a lot of chopping. It was like, I think that was the whole match. It was just chops, the whole match. There was no other move. I would like that. I mean, I'd like to see some kind of Bullet Club situation with Bullet Club Gold and the new David Finlay Bullet Club over in Japan.
Agreed. I want to see Jay White on the show and how he fits into the Japanese story, because I've been a little lost with this Japanese, not like lost, like I'm following it, but it's like they're losing me. I mean, with the Bullet Club in Japan story, I'm just not into it. But I'm giving it a shot. So it'll be interesting. It would be interesting if they interacted. I want to see the Young Bucks. I feel the Young Bucks always have a great match on pay-per-view, and wouldn't mind seeing them in some sort of not mixed tag, but like some combined tag situation. And if there could be some sort of women's match, if they could bring some women over, it would have been cool if Mercedes didn't injure herself. And this would have been a great show for her to make her AEW debut on. Totally understand that that's not, like, most likely not happening now.
She should at least show up and, like, wave or something, tease it for the next.
Yeah, that would be great. Hopefully. But yeah, I guess, but either way, like, just the matches announced already, I'm ready to go. Everything else is like icing on the cake.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun regardless. I think it'll be everybody's. It's already a top-heavy card with Danielson, Okada, and what was the other? Man, I'm blanking. Oh, Ospreay and Kenny Omega. That's what the show is basically around. And now, like you said, everything else will just be extra fun. I hope it's not like I was joking about 17 matches. Just give us like 7 matches, 8 matches. That'd be fine for me.
Yeah, I'm down for a 4-hour show. After that, it gets a little fatiguing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am going to be flying out to Toronto for this. This is like the one show this year that I guess I went to LA for the WrestleMania stuff, but this I was like, I have to go to. It was just so fun last year.
Yeah, man.
And Toronto's pretty close to New York.
That shows you the power of those 2 matches, because when they got announced, that I immediately started Googling, like, man, can I make it to Toronto? Can I make it out there? What's going on? Because otherwise, I wouldn't. I'm not that kind of wrestling fan. Like, yeah, it sounds fun to go to like wherever, Texas for Rumble, or go to Mania in another city. But I'm typically, if it's not here, I'm not going. I'm not traveling for a wrestling show. But that was the first time where I felt like, man, never been to Toronto. Maybe it'd be worth it. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm very, very stoked on this card, and like, I hope we get some announcements on Wednesday, because. Yeah,
I at this point, like, when else? What else are they waiting for Saturday for Collision? So let's talk about Collision. It started this past Saturday. Love the look, love the vibe. How they have different graphics. The Elton John thing didn't really do much for me. You posted an Instagram story about how they should have used the Faith No More song Collision. I couldn't agree more. It's been in my head since. I don't really feel like if they do use the Elton John song, they have to recut the intro to fit the song better. It looks like they had another song in there. They got the rights at the last second and they just plopped it in there. And then the show started with CM Punk back. I have to say, when CM Punk did his brawl out, his segment at the Scrum, after that, I was just like, oh, there's no way he's coming back. That's it. He's done. Like, as a company, he just trashed the company. He's got to go. And then they had the fight, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that was it. But then as weeks pass, I'm like, you know what? I am not a business. I don't have a financial stake in AEW, in TBS, in TNT. I am but merely a fan. And as a fan, I want to see CM Punk. I was on team Let's Get Punk Back. And he came out, and I have to say, like, when I heard the song, I marked out a little bit. It wasn't as big a mark out as the first time he came back, of course. But it was great to have him back. The promo was okay. It wasn't one of his best. I did like some of the lines. I liked how he said the counterfeit bucks thing. And I just liked that he was back causing shit. What did you think about the promo?
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, I'm going to go back real quick to the song. What happens? Sure. What happens if they have to switch Saturday night? You know what I mean? Because it happens.
They'll get a new song.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Like, now you're locking yourself into a Saturday night is all right for whatever. It's like, I don't know. Should have been Faith No More. Anyway, going back to Punk. I've never been a fan of Punk. I've been very vocal about this. I didn't watch most of his WWE run. I went back and like gave it, some check out some clips, and I saw the pipe bomb and whatever, and I was like, okay,
Were you just not watching WWE at the time?
Yeah, at the time I was out. There was a time period where I was out of wrestling and overall, because I was in a band, I was touring, I was busy. I wasn't really like home watching wrestling. So I never really got into him, and going back and watching really didn't do it for me. It didn't have the same effect, I guess, as if I were to be watching it live. I would be more invested. So when he was coming back, my mentality was, all right, well, never liked the guy. Let me give him a fresh start. Let me give him an opportunity to win me over, and let's do this. And his comeback was kind of a flop in the sense of, injuries and like the brawl out. Like he failed at winning me back as a fan. And now this promo, he came out, first of all, he came out too stoic, too kind of like, hey guys, I'm back. Like you could hear it in the crowd reaction. It wasn't as big, like you said it yourself. You didn't pop as hard as when he first came back. So, and the crowd was like that too. It was kind of a mix of like, yeah. Right before he came out, a lot of CM Punk chants, but then when he finally came out, it was kind of like mellowed out. Because he brought that energy. He brought a mild kind of like, hey, none of that running into the crowd and like that exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then he gets in the ring and starts cutting a promo. And, the counterfeit Bucks thing was a good line. And props to the Bucks for replying online. I don't know if you saw the Twitter response, but they changed their bio to like, if this was 2018, we'd already have a counterfeit Bucks shirt on PWTs.
Yeah. I thought that was the perfect response. I agree.
That was amazing. But, it's obviously clear just from that bio and the way it all worked out that this is now becoming a work. It may not have been a work in the beginning, but it's now becoming part of the story. But I just didn't really feel anything from that promo. Like he kept saying, tell me when I'm telling lies. And then he immediately held up a pair of sneakers and called them boots. I'm like, well, there's one lie. And then another lie, like you're the best in the world, but Dominic Mysterio can get more heat on the mic than you. Like it's just, I'm not buying it. And then that's my issue with Punk and has always been. He feels like as a metalhead, he feels like a poser. Like you're claiming punk rock, but then you come out and talk about business and money. I'll be the dollars and cents. Like that's not punk rock, dude. What are you doing? You're not winning me over. If you want to be punk rock, then be punk rock. That's how you win me. Cause I love punk music and the punk lifestyle. So it's just, it hurts because I have friends they're like, yeah, he represents punk rock and he's our people. I'm like, no, he's not. He's a poser. And then calling people soft, dude, you don't even want to face Kenta. Or every time you jump into the ring, you break a bone. Like you shouldn't be calling anybody soft. Come on, man. So the whole thing, and I know I'm being hateful, and I know a lot of people probably like, oh, come on. Like, I'm just playing the other side of this. Everybody's excited about Punk being back. I'm not excited. I'm hoping that get it out of your system, get a few matches in it, and then get out of here, dude. I'm with Seth Rollins on this one. Go away, Philly.
Yeah. Well, I think AEW needs him in the sense of
sure.
To your point, he still does draw quite an audience, and they need any boost they can get at the moment. Yeah. It will be interesting to see how the ratings turn out for this thing. And even whatever the ratings are for the first week, it doesn't even matter, I think, because it's not even real. There's still this hype building up. The true rating that matters is like 3 or 4 weeks in. Mm-hmm. When the dust has settled, so to speak, and you get like what is the equivalent of the average rating. Like that's what's going to matter.
And it's already like I forgot where I saw it. It might have been Wrestle Talk or Brian Alvarez. One of those people were already saying that the first show tickets were selling like crazy, but then the subsequent shows not so much because people don't know what's going to happen. People are kind of like, well, let's see where it goes. But yeah, that is a true test. Everybody wanted to tune in to see what Punk would say. Now that he's done that, are you excited to see him move forward? Like, are you excited to see what else happens? I'm going to keep watching. And again, I get it. AEW needs him. And I will definitely tune in if they eventually do Punk versus Omega or, CMFTR versus the Elite. Because there was some real heat there. And I'd like to see, I always like watching that. It seems exciting. But I don't know. I don't know where this goes. Like, he's older, he's more brittle. Like, where is this going to go? Like, he can't have like a master run of his life.
He has a limited timeline. They should get this going as quick as possible. Like, let's go. And I think there has to, like, even if they haven't agreed to work together, I think he's going to bully them into working together by just doing these kind of shady promos, because there's no way they saw this and feel like they can't respond to it. And they're businessmen just as much. So I feel like we're going to get this sooner than later. And if we don't get this, it is a very big mistake that they keep teasing us with it.
Yeah, they're teasing us. They're doing the separate shows thing. It just feels like the upcoming Collision. It's the name of the show, Collision. There's gonna be a collision with Dynamite. It's gonna happen, or at least it should happen. And if it doesn't, it's gonna be very disappointing, like you said.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I'm curious now. We started this show a little differently than normal because we want to talk about Forbidden Door. But I always ask all my guests, what is your earliest wrestling memory? How did you get into pro wrestling?
Ooh, okay. As a child, I have vivid memories of recording on a VHS I remember putting the tape on the little hole in the VHS and everything to tape over. One of my parents had something recorded, and I taped over it. WrestleMania 7 was the one that I taped over. I don't know. Just honestly, don't remember my very first memory. I remember just it was on TV and liking Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. And I met Macho and Hulk when I was a little kid at like a yacht party. My friend invited me to, and got to shake their hands. And I was just like in awe. So I followed from then all the way up until right up about till when Stone Cold kind of retired. And then that's when I started. It was the band and girls, and it wasn't cool to like wrestling back then. I mean, kind of with the Stone Cold, but I still felt like, well, that was when I was a kid. I'm going to let that behind. I'm going to go do adult stuff and party and blah, blah, blah. But then eventually I had friends bring me back into wrestling, inviting me to their house to watch the Rumble or Mania. And it's like, all right, I'll get back into it. And started going to I had never experienced indie shows. And when I moved here to LA, that was when I went to my first independent show. It was a bar wrestling show, I believe, or PCW Ultra, one of those two. And I remember just being blown away, like, wow, what is this? This is completely different. This is like bands. It was like a band show. Like it felt like a punk rock show. People were standing around the ring and banging on the mats, and there's wrestlers flying into the crowd, and I just fell in love with it all over again. But yeah, my earliest memories are definitely Hulk and Macho and Ultimate Warrior. Like Macho's wedding with Elizabeth was a very impactful childhood memory of mine as well. Macho getting bit by the snake, by Jake the Snake's snake, was also huge for me. So yeah, those are some of my earlier memories.
What was the storyline that got you back into wrestling when your friends kept, trying to get you back into it? What finally gripped you?
Dude, it was honestly AJ. It was AJ's debut at the Rumble. Because all of my friends were super stoked. They were like, oh my God, this dude from Japan, and he's in the Bullet Club. And I'm like, what the fuck's the Bullet Club? And he's like, look at my shirt. This is the Bullet Club. He had the Bullet Club shirt on. I'm like, okay, who's this guy? And then they started showing me clips of AJ, and I'm like, oh, this is dope. And then, when he appeared, there was actually a good pop and everything, and he seemed great. And I was like, all right, this is interesting. So I started going into that. I wasn't really into Roman. I know Roman Reigns was the big guy. I mean, he has been the big dog for years, but I never really liked him until this whole Bloodline situation happened. But yeah, I just started following. I think AJ was what got me back in for sure.
So that doesn't seem like that long ago, AJ returning. That's like 7 years ago, or AJ debuting at the Rumble. Yeah. So that was a pretty quick trajectory of not watching it all to getting hardcore into like indie and New Japan stuff, and like you just got immersed in it. It sounds like.
Yeah. There was really that dynamic. The whole AJ came from Japan. What's Japan? Oh, New Japan. Like I had heard about it, but I never followed it because it was hard to get, obviously back then. And then then stuff started happening with New Japan. Like shortly after I started falling in love, like that's when we got the Omega Jericho Wrestle Kingdom build up. So I just started falling in love, and I started going to every indie show I could get to. I started watching everything I could get my hands on from New Japan World, going back watching all the Wrestle Kingdoms. It was a short amount of time, I guess. I mean, I don't know, 7 years is a lot, but it's still comparatively.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is.
Like 20 years of 20 years of fandom that people have,
Right. No, but that's great. And eventually you started this Comedy Store wrestling podcast. Yeah. And typically we talk about the intersection of rock music and pro wrestling, which we certainly can still do. But I want to talk about the intersection of pro wrestling and comedy as well, because obviously a huge intersection. And how did you get involved with the Comedy Store? And then when did you start noticing wrestlers coming around to the Comedy Store?
It kind of all happened at the same time. I was doing my own wrestling podcast called Let There Be Heels that didn't really work out. We did like 20 episodes. But I wanted to do a podcast about wrestling because I wanted to talk about it. I was very excited, obviously. And I did an RRBG podcast live from Gorilla Mall for one of the blood sports that Josh Barnett did. And I started inviting just people that I like, musicians that I know that would be into it, to come hang out and be a part of it. And then one of the people that I reached out to was Johnny Skortis, who he was one of the Store Horsemen. So the Comedy Store had their own wrestling podcast before called the Store Horsemen, that was led by Tony Hinchcliffe. It was Tony Hinchcliffe, Chris Burns, Johnny Skortis, Matt Edgar, Josh Martin, and a couple other folks. But I would watch that because they were funny, and I thought, this is a cool alternative to like a Wade Keller or, maybe Stone Cold or Jericho's podcast. I wanted more wrestling content that was funny, and they were the ones. So I invited Johnny out. I'm like, hey man, if you want to come out, just pop in. And then after that, he's like, let's go back to the Comedy Store. I'll introduce you to everybody. And he introduced me to Tony and all these folks. And I started hanging out with Tony and coming out to every Monday to see Kill Tony at the Comedy Store, and then just kind of became friends with everyone. And then eventually Tony left to Texas with everybody else, all the comedians that left. And there was an opening. I saw the opening. And like, well, their show Store Horsemen is being canceled, or not canceled, but just kind of going on hiatus while he's away. There needs to be wrestling here. So I met the producers at the Comedy Store Studios. I told them I would love to do a wrestling show here, continue the tradition of the Store Horsemen. Can't call it Store Horsemen, obviously, because that's theirs. But how about just Comedy Store Wrestling? Very simple. CSW feels like a fed of its own. And during that time, the Store Horsemen actually put a wrestling ring in the main room. And at this time, I was friendly with them, so I was there helping them out. And they did a thing called Storecade, where it was just wrestling matches with live commentary from the Store Horsemen. I brought in Josh Barnett to do guest commentary. I hit him up. I'm like, come do this. And then this was right before AEW. They had pretty much the whole AEW roster. There was the Lucha Brothers were there, Darby Allin, Matt Sydal, just you name it. It was Luchasaurus was there. So it was really interesting to see wrestling in the main room because it's very low ceilings. So a lot of these high flyers couldn't do their moves. But then slowly when I saw that, I saw the potential. Like there's a connection there between wrestling fans and comedy fans. There's a lot of comedians that love wrestling. There's obviously the connection with Andy Kaufman, and we saw that in WrestleMania with the Hall of Fame induction this year. But yeah, that was kind of how it all got started. I got right place, right time, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there's a lot of similarities just in the sense of like doing a stand-up set and cutting a promo are very similar. You're hitting beats, you're either working babyface or heel. You want to either win the crowd over or have them not like you. So there's a lot of techniques I feel that you could learn from both. And it's interesting watching like some wrestlers do stand up, like Dolph Ziggler and his brother Ryan Nemeth. I know they've done a bunch of shows there.
Big Bill, dude. Like? Big Bill's doing comedy.
I mean, he's a funny guy. He has good delivery, I feel.
We had no idea because his first, by the way, and that's like, that's crazy in its own. His first comedy set was at the Comedy Store. Not a lot of people get to say that. But he went up there like nothing, did the belly room, and like he has it. He has the bug. I mean, obviously, everybody was blown away. Like, how come he's so good at this? I'm like, because he's used to performing in front of large audiences. You guys don't understand. He's used to controlling a crowd, But there's the connection between promo work, but there's also the connection of the travel. A lot of comedians spend a lot of time on the road. They spend, they're touring, they're traveling, they're living out of a suitcase. So they kind of get that camaraderie as well.
That's great. And with like Dolph Ziggler, do you see like it's not his wrestling persona? He performs as Nick Nemeth, right? Like under his real name.
Yeah.
So he's just doing like regular material, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, so there's always some wrestling involved, and he does a good job of setting it up for fans that are just comedy fans that are not wrestling fans. Like he'll let them like, oh, by the way, during the day I work for the WWE. I play a character called Dolph Ziggler. I lose all the time, and like he sets it all up like that, and it's hilarious. But he is very funny, and honestly, I think he's funnier doing crowd work. Like I saw him the other night actually here at the Hollywood Improv, and he had his obvious like jokes that he had written, but then he started talking to somebody in the audience, and it was even funnier. Like he's very quick with the crowd work. So I think he definitely has potential. Once he steps away from the ring to just pursue that full time. I think.
Yeah, and also I feel like one thing I thought was very cool was this past WrestleMania weekend. WWE actually worked with you guys, and they did one of their recruitment camps in the Comedy Store. Could you talk a little bit about how that came together?
Yeah, so once the show started rolling, Comedy Store Wrestling, it was all very. Once we got the first episode in the books, it was all very. Let's see how far we can take this, because who knows? You never know with wrestling and a new show. You never know where it's going to go. But thankfully, the fans started following. It started growing and growing. And so we started reaching out to more and more people, because at first I was like, I'll use all my connects. I'll bring all the New Japan people that I know. I'll bring some of the AEW people that I know. But I don't really have a strong connection in WWE. So our producer John had some people that he knew that worked behind the scenes. He started emailing them and like, hey, what if we do this? What if we do that? And it took a while, but I think once they established that they wanted to bring Andy Kaufman into the Hall of Fame, they decided we need to involve the Comedy Store somehow. And we ended up striking a deal where they did a collaboration T-shirt. It was the WrestleMania, and it had the Comedy Store logo right in the middle, and in the back it had our show logo, the Comedy Store Wrestling logo, which is to me mind blowing that I have official WWE merch that exists. and then they also the day that they showed up to the store, they brought us championship belts with side plates that say the Comedy Store. Those are hanging in the office now. But the part of the deal was, for this collaboration, they wanted to use the main room. Like you said, the connection is there. They wanted their young NXT talent to get on stage and perform a promo in front of a full room under the lights and the glamour and they did a good job. I forget his Matt Bloom, Mr. Prince Albert. Yes. He hyped them all up and like tried to make them nervous right before they went. Like, you guys don't understand who's been on this stage. Like Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Jim Carrey and Robin Williams. Like, this is a stage of legends, and so you better fucking bring it. And it was interesting, man. They showed up, and props to them. They showed up with like 4 or 5 giant buses full of people and equipment, and they were in and out super fast. Within like 15 minutes, they loaded it out. But they showed up. They set everything up and did the auditions. There's like 50 different NXT hopefuls running promos. I didn't know what to expect. They called me up like, hey, come out to the store at 10 a.m. We're doing the NXT thing. Second I walk in, I bump into MVP. I'm like, what? Hello. Hi, MVP. How you doing? And Omos was there. Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Dolph, LA Knight. All these dudes, everybody was there, and I was just kind of trying not to mark out, just kind of like, yeah, hi, yes, welcome to the Comedy Store. Nice to meet you. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, anything you need, I got you. And then I ran into William Regal, and he was the nicest one of all of them. He like pulled me aside, started talking. He's like, I remember coming here a few years back with Hornswoggle and him getting like blackout drunk and trying to fight a homeless guy in your parking lot. And I'm like, what the fuck? When was this? They're like, yeah, back in, I don't know, a long time ago. But I got to sit with him. He gave me a booklet with all of the NXT hopefuls, and there was like a section for me to write notes. Like, okay, yeah, this promo was good, this promo was bad. So I got to sit there and kind of like judge talent with him. And I gotta say, there's a lot of rough people that need some work on their promo skills, but there was a lot of potential, man, and it was just really interesting to be involved in that. And we were trying to get more of the like LA Knight to do the podcast, but the only person that stuck around after the tryout was Dolph. So and he loves the store, so we were like, come on downstairs, let's do a podcast. So we did a quick one with him. But we just wanted to be involved with them and let them know, like, we wanted to be a destination. Whenever a wrestler's in town, you should come to the store, hang out. We'll take care of you, VIP, show you the building, anything you need. And since then, we've had like Bray Wyatt stop in. Bray Wyatt stopped in during Mania weekend, which was kind of funny because people were not sure if he was in town. They weren't sure if he was going to show up. And then meanwhile, my co-host Earl's posting pictures on the internet of him and Bray in the hallway. I was like, well, he's in town. So yeah, it's been a crazy wild, like, the show's only a year old. So in a year, we went from not existing to working with the WWE and having official merchandise, which, I don't know, that's pretty fucking crazy to me.
Off to a good start, I would say.
I think so. Yeah.
That's awesome. And before we go, I do want to also mention, you mentioned you're friends with Josh Barnett. You recently collaborated with him on what is quite a tasty beverage. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. It's right here. The Black Blood of the Earth. He named it, inspiration from the old movie there. But it's a 11.5% barrel-aged barley wine. It's not a crusher. It's not Budweiser. It's a heavy duty beer. He wanted it that way on purpose. It's Josh Barnett. If you know who he is, he's an intense person, very brutal, very metal, loves heavy stuff. So obviously we had the first beer needed to be heavy, but we collaborated with Taps Brewing here in Tustin, California. Came up with like, hey, we want to do like a barley wine or a stout. We tasted a bunch of different recipes and tweaked them. And then Josh makes his own bourbon. So we ended up getting the barrels from his distillery, Cespa Creek, brought those War Master bourbon barrels down to Tustin and threw the beer in there. And we aged it for about 2 years in these barrels. So it's very, very bourbon heavy, very smoky, and you get that dark chocolate caramel aspect to the beer. But we're actually doing a show. I don't know when this is going out. Is this live?
On Wednesday.
Wednesday. Perfect. We should have time. This Saturday, June 24th, we'll be at Knucklehead in Hollywood. We're going to be selling this beer. There's going to be a meet and greet with the War Master, so you guys can meet him, get signatures and pictures and whatnot. But yeah, and then it's just the beginning. I mean, we've already turned a profit on it. This is my first official venture into having an RRBG beer, because I've done collaborations. They're all up there with other folks at Killswitch Engage beer up there that I did with Cigar City. So I've been trying to get this off the ground for a while. This is the first official RRBG Brew Series beer, and we're gonna do more. We were already talking about doing a simpler beer, a crusher, like people were expecting, something you can crush at the shows and not get completely passed out drunk with an 11.5%. But we still want to keep the beer geeks happy with some nerdy, crafty stuff.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, thanks so much for tuning in and shooting the shit about pro wrestling with me. Welcome back anytime to talk about the stuff. And you mentioned the RRBG podcast. Fans could also check that out. That's more a music-based show than pro wrestling and more lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle comedy. There's it was all music in the beginning, but now it's just kind of, anybody that I know that wants to come on that's doing something exciting, I'll bring them on.
Nice. Yeah. And of course, Comedy Store Wrestling, as you mentioned. And if you're ever at the store, if you're ever in LA, go to the store. It's a fun experience to go. I actually ran into you outside of the store my last time there, and then just walked in, and it turned out I was 2 feet away sitting from Quentin Tarantino. So you never know who shows up to the store. It's always an exciting time.
Yeah, come on by. If you're actually traveling into town and you're a fan of wrestling, just hit us up on Instagram. Hit Comedy Store Wrestling up on Instagram, and I'll walk you in. I'll show you around. If you're traveling, if you're local to LA, you might have to buy a ticket, but I'll still meet you there. We'll say what's up. But yeah, it's exciting. Like you said, you never know who's there. Tarantino's there often. The other night I was there, and The Weeknd walked in with Will I Am and a bunch of other huge names. I'm just what is happening right now? And that was a Tuesday. So it's every night of the week.
Know, yeah.
You never know.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully you enjoy Forbidden Door. Hopefully CM Punk will ruin it for you this weekend.
Oh, CM Punk. Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening.